All right. All right, folks. Got one person watching, and I'm just gonna start doodling and doing some quick sketches here. Nothing big. Trying to get some light. All right, we got 4 people watching. We got 5. I'll wait till we get a few more people here online, and I'm gonna start discussing 5 things to avoid when starting to draw. So before I even get into any of that, I am going to I'm just going to start sketching a little bit. Give me a moment. All right, we're going to talk about 5 habits. And before I do all that, I'm just going to start sketching and doodling here as people start to filter through and come in. So just real quick, why even talk about habits for drawing, and why is that even remotely important for people to even understand? Well, when I first started off sketching and drawing in college, I never realized how important formulating good habits were, especially when you start off and you start drawing things the wrong way. It's sort of difficult to understand why formulating good habits is important for people. Now, I'm still struggling with trying to maintain and eradicate and move some of the bad habits that I still have when I'm sketching and drawing. And we're going to get into that here in a little bit. We got 5 people now, so we'll get started. And remember, if you're watching, just give me a quick shout here, and just let me know that you are online, and let me know who you are, your name, and thank you for joining. So I am just quickly indicating and doing my little scribbles here as I'm sketching through. All right, let's talk about habits of drawing. Now, one of the first habits that I have when I start, or some of the bad habits that I had when I started drawing, when we start with the first one, is being way too stiff. And so what do I mean by being too stiff? Typically when I see people start off with sketching an object, is that they tend to be very stiff-handed and not loose enough. So let's just talk about, let me just show you what it is that I mean. So I just started the sketching process. You sort of were able to see what it was that I was doing when I was sketching this car, right? When I started drawing at the beginning, when I started my training, I would start off with that. Okay, it's where you have a certain amount of pressure that comes from uh, your movement in your arm. And when you start to draw, you just really haven't formulated that finesse of being able to vary your pressure and to sketch loosely, because most of the time you would have been sketching at one pressure and you continue on with that single pressure, right? And so when you start off, when people start training to draw, or if they're going to school, you need to really concentrate on drawing loose and not being too stiff-handed. The other thing that people do when they're drawing things like ellipses or circles is that they tend to be very sketchy with their lines instead of going with one even stroke. So when you're sketching loose, it allows you to not have that, or to have more continuity in your lines rather than having things disconnected. I try to teach some people in my family this, but it never seems to work out. they keep drawing these sketchy lines all the time. So that's the other thing, is ensuring that you're staying loose. So when I first started drawing this ellipse here, you saw that just the way I even hold my marker is I've got a very light touch. But it took me a long time to develop it, that technique. So first bad habit, like I said, when you're doing this, is to not be too heavy-handed and too stiff. This seems to be, I'll try to use a Sharpie here as I'm going back and forth between different kind of markers. And don't worry about trying to be perfect at the beginning when you're trying to be loose. I mean, all this stuff takes quite a bit of time and practice. It always seems easy when you watch somebody do it. And we're going to get to the next bad habits, formulating bad habits. All right. Now, the second one, so we just talked about being way too stiff. And the other one is trying to draw way too many complicated shapes. All right. Hey there, we got the art of DHT. How's it going, buddy? Glad you're with me here. So if you were listening, we've got we're talking about being too stiff, and I'm going on to the second one, which is drawing overly complicated objects. It is really hard to convince people at the beginning when you are drawing or you're taking the approach to draw something really complicated, because people typically don't want to wait for results, and that's fine. There's no problem with that. All right, just as long as you're able to handle the fact that you're not going to progress as quickly as you want to progress. Okay, so when I say that you need to avoid drawing complicated objects, what I mean by that is you should really avoid trying to always approach something that is very complex without putting enough practice to the simple items. So let's just say, for example, if you're drawing like this car, for instance, I've developed a habit of drawing this particular this particular view, because it's come with practice. As long, just as much as some of the other views that I draw, it's all practice, right? But when I first started this, I didn't start this way. I started. Do another one. I started to draw using very basics and fundamentals, which is bloody boring. I gotta say, it is boring. I'm not gonna lie. It's boring. So when I'm doing a view like this car, what you should be practicing at the beginning is, well, how does that car relate to, my perspective? And in all those books that you read, whether it's drawing cars, or you'll know that on my DVD set, I cover this extensively because, I don't want you to develop bad habits. I want you to develop good habits. So I basically, we dissect, or what I do is I dissect the meaning of the approach of the boxes, because drawing a box in perspective is always going to be easier for you than trying to draw something that is very complicated, because you haven't really rationalized all that in your head yet, aside from just copying what you see, which is also okay. And we'll probably get into that on another video or conversation about reference photos, and is copying photographs, is it cheating, all that other good stuff, which is always something that's debated. And I just have certain opinions of it, and I've never changed my opinion about what I feel when people copy, which is, there's nothing wrong with it, basically. So anyway, here when I'm showing you these shapes, is if I'm drawing a box in perspective, and I'm drawing something that's very basic, this is far more gratifying to me than drawing this incorrectly, okay, where things are completely wrong. But when you start to set things up in motion and draw things and understand how these basic shapes are formed, this is the foundation that you want to be looking for, and this is what's really going to help you. Okay, so that's what I mean by avoiding complicated subjects and just start building up. Not that I mean you just avoid it altogether, but you should build a visual vocabulary of simple shapes and understand how they relate in the 3D environment, and before you get into something that's complicated, because it'll be difficult to execute it that way. All right, so that's number 2. The third one is, and this is an ongoing struggle with me, I have this problem all the time, is comparing yourself to other people. Boy, I really struggle with that one. I guess I just can't help it. I wish I could say I'll practice what I preach, but I don't. And so, hold on, I just want to read some of the comments. People are asking some questions here. We got Manoj Meena. We've got Jay Chen Kwan. Which one is the first to draw when you start to draw a quick sketch? Oh, what do I, okay, so are you asking what do I like to draw when I start drawing something, if it's going to be a quick sketch? Well, for me, it's all different now. I don't really have a preference of what I'm going to draw, because I've now become fairly seasoned to the point that I'll draw anything I can pick up. So the other day I was drawing this mic, by the way, the mic that I'm recording, all that I use to record all my videos. I was drawing this microphone. I was drawing my video camera, and really any kind of found object. I really don't, for me, I don't even care as much what the subject is. All I'm trying to do is to reintroduce my brain into looking at shapes and understanding them. So it's like a brain activity and an exercise that's really important for cultivating your own visual vocabulary, if that makes sense. But you will also catch me drawing these boxes in perspective. Even though I might be doing all these other cars and things, I will definitely start going back to basics and start drawing just these boxes and rectangles and trying to set all that stuff up. Okay, we're just getting some more questions here. I'm going to keep moving on. There's questions here, which is good, which is great. Okay, solved. That's good. All right, so I guess I answered your question. I'm pretty happy about that. So we just talked about, okay, so anyway, I was talking about comparing yourself to others. I don't think I even completed that. So let's just talk about how comparing yourself is destructive. When you compare yourself to, I want to distinguish between comparing and inspiration. When you look at other people's work and you admire their craft and their creativity, admiration and being inspired by it should be a motivating factor. Okay, where it becomes destructive for you is hoping to be at that person's level without putting in the required practice and hard work to get to that level. It's very hard for you to get to a certain level that took somebody else maybe 4 or 5 years or whatever it is, and unless you're really gifted and talented, you can probably speed all that stuff up. But putting yourself down because you're not able to accomplish that is not a very productive way to start engaging in the act of drawing, because you're actually missing the whole point when you start off that way. You should be seeking that as a target, or have small mini goals to achieve until you can reach the target of becoming as good, or maybe just close to the people that you admire. And that takes some work. So it's okay to be inspired by them, but you shouldn't compare yourself. And the reason why I say I have that difficulty is because I've developed a habit of drawing and sketching, and I feel that sometimes, well, I should be better than I am right now, because I've invested a lot of time and years in it. That why can't I be as good as that other person? Or when I see someone else's design that's super complicated, I always think to myself, man, it'd be so cool for me to be able to create and innovate shapes like that look so pretty, that look so rad. So it's cool. I mean, but again, I have to put things in perspective, that as long as I'm progressing, I should be happy with it. Because the reality is that as you continue to sketch and draw and practice, you will be better than your previous sketch. Okay, so always keep that in mind. So that is number 3. So we finished 3 so far. We talked about the first one, to recap, is being too stiff, stay loose, and that's what we were doing here when I started sketching this car. And then the second one was to avoid complicated subjects, and we talked about why that's important. 3 is to compare yourself to others. And the fourth one is distractions. It is very easy to be distracted when you're drawing, meaning that if you're at your computer and you're drawing, it's a whole new different ball game now, with the things that we have that are readily available to us at our disposal, meaning your iPads or your video games, your Xboxes, your droids, or you're playing games on your droids and that sort of thing, or you're watching movies. Everything is so incredibly easily accessible now that everything's at your fingertips, so you can get distracted really easily. So when you start to draw, or you want to get into formulate a habit to start sketching and drawing, you got to make sure that you don't have those distractions. or at least the ones that harm you or prevent you from engaging in that act. So for me, listening to super loud music is not, if we're talking about heavy metal and things like that, it's not a big deal if you're not distracted by it, and it adds as an energy boost and momentum for you to keep sketching. But that only happens to me when I'm sketching something that doesn't take a lot of thought or creativity. But if I have to design something, then I need to slow down. I need something that's more relaxing, either that's going to be dead quiet, silence, or it's going to be something meditative. Because drawing in itself and sketching, once you get into that zone, is in fact a very meditative experience. And it's meditative because you get lost in that whole process. But if you have all these other things where you've got, video game controllers like this one, you got controllers all over the place, and before you know it, just when you're getting ready to sit down and work, you've got Super Mario Brothers or something playing. And so that's the meaning. That's the fourth thing to avoid when you're starting to draw. All right, I'm going to start looking at some of the questions here. All right, so Jay-Chan Kwan has asked, I heard a pen is good for sketching and improving ability. No. I mean, I don't want to say no. Nothing is going to improve your ability except for practicing. So there isn't a single pen in the world that's going to make you sketch better. You may have preferences as you start to develop a habit to draw. You may like the feel of a pen on how it feels on a particular sheet of paper. This is newsprint paper here. So I've developed a habit of enjoying how these Prismacolor markers feel on this page, or even a Sharpie. But I like the Sharpie better when I'm sketching on a Hammermill laser paper. I enjoy that actually more. Just the smoothness of it is really cool. But a lot of people, when they watch my videos, say, what pen are you using? So I don't know if it really improves it doesn't really improve your sketching ability, but it improves your perception of the tactile feel and the feedback you're getting between the paper and the pen that you're using. So they're two different things. So anyway, I hope that kind of answers your question. I do like big pens though, and I would show you probably my favorite. Oh man, I don't have it here. Let me see if I can find one. Because I'd love to actually go into the supplies that I use and why I like them. Certain pens, I don't know if I can say they make me draw better, but I feel better when I'm drawing. So maybe that's a way to kind of relate it. I feel better, and if I feel better, that gives me a better positive attitude as I'm sketching. So in a roundabout way, maybe it can help you, but the actual pen doesn't physically make you a better sketcher. So, all right, what else do we got here? Ask me some more questions before I start the last tip here on what to avoid when starting to draw. Manoj is asking me, is it big pen? Yeah, so big pens I like. It's the one that I use is a silver. I think it's like a, oh man, I'd have to leave this room to go and see if I can find it, but I don't have any in my drawer. No, I don't have it here. I do like these GTECH pens though. These are great. But you can't, it's hard to use a GTECH for something this size. So I use something thicker, right? Like these. All right. No other questions. So I'm going to keep going. This is going to be the last tip, is attachment to your artwork. So the only time I get attached to artwork is maybe looking at my sons, and he certainly gets attached to them. And I try to tell him that, hey, buddy, you've got like hundreds of these pages all over the place, and they're creating an incredible mess. You're gonna have to pick probably some of your best ones, and then throw the rest of them away. And he freaks out. I can't throw that drawing away. I worked so hard on it. And in essence, we as adults feel the same way, because there's a certain amount of pride and accomplishment when you improve your drawing ability, and you want to be able to showcase. And I think that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But when we were going to school and you are training to be proficient in sketching, you have to understand that that particular sketch is going to be one out of several. So theoretically, your next sketch is going to be just a small percentage better than the last one, hopefully. And then over time, you're going to see a world of difference with that practice. And so when we had a course. In fact, this is a great example. We had a course for rendering eye-popping reflections, and I gotta say that I was completely floored with what people started off with. And I told people, keep your drawings, which is opposite with what I'm saying right now. But the reason I said that was I want you to keep it so that you can, when you're done, you can compare what it is that you ended up with and see the improvement. And it was incredible improvement. But what happened is that they don't need to keep the emails. They can just throw, once they've finished all those sketches, they can throw those other ones away, because there's no need to keep them, because you've already gotten better. So you have to develop a habit of not being attached to your work, that all it is just a process, and it's just practice, and you don't need it. So once again, those are the five different habits that we've got. Yeah, so you've got it. Kwan is just, he's chatting with me here, and practice is the most important thing. But when I practice to sketch every day, it's quite hard to maintain. Sometimes I need a passion. What would you do when you feel you don't want to practice? That's a very good question. That is an awesome question. So I think that if you have something you're passionate about, then I think what you need to do is just draw more of those subjects. So if you're passionate about cars, then draw as much cars as you want. I think what happens is that there's a certain amount of focus that is lost. And you have to keep trying, and you have to keep practicing. Because I remember when I first started looking at my sketches when I started, and they were so terrible that I didn't want to practice. I really didn't want to practice. And I used to think, now that I'm teaching now, I'm thinking it's so easy for me to relate to people and have them understand why they feel certain things, is because I've sort of really documented and understood my own feelings at the time. And I know that even though it was a struggle, I had a bigger goal in mind. And that bigger goal was that, I had these other people that I was inspired by, and that I was pretty decent at drawing at a young age. And that as I got older, it was more or less a mindset of proving to myself that I know I can do this. And that by not doing it, I am robbing myself of my potential. So having that stuck in my head and reminding myself of that, which is reminding yourself of a purpose. So if you have a purpose of why you're doing it, that should help feed your motivation. So you should at least try to write some of those things down as to, what are you doing for it? Why are you doing it? What is it for? And what do you plan to do with it? So if you understand those goals, that should help you with your passion. Even if it's a simple goal as to, I just want to be cool at drawing. There's value to that. You don't have to do anything with it. It's just a sense of accomplishment that, I did something. I was fearful of tackling something like perspective, and I worked at it, and I'm happy with the results because I know I've gotten better. So it's really a confidence thing. So yes, it is hard to maintain, but it's hard to maintain is because you feel continuously bad about the output of your work. But you had to formulate a habit and to be able to do it enough to where it's second nature to say, hey, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm going to spend 30 minutes doing this instead of doing something else, and consciously make that effort to execute. And once you do that, you'll find that it's going to generate your own interest and you're going to feel like not wanting to miss it. Just think of it like working out. If you engage in the practice of exercise, you feel really good after you work out. And the more, the stronger you feel, and you feel like you're getting into better shape, that acts as a catalyst to continue that effort. So hope that makes sense. How do you design? Okay, how do you develop? Okay, so Manoj Jamina is saying, how do you develop a new concept car? Because that is what's required in design college at an interview. Well, I think you gotta first, concept cars, exterior designs are extremely competitive, really, really competitive. It's oftentimes very hard to get in, and you only have a select few, even with so many applicants that are trying to get in. Only a few are selected out of so many students. When you start off with 40 or 50 students, it's very hard. But if you're going to school in India, I don't know what the process is, to be honest, in India. If you are in India and you're trying to get into school, but I think if you're just trying to get into college, all they want to see is just a design portfolio, that you have some sort of capability, that they can take that raw capability and teach you the right way. I don't think uh, they want to see that you have some ideas, that you have passion for it, over above anything else. You're just not you're not experienced to know that about concept development. But what you can do is show that you have an interest enough that you are purchasing books and that you're purchasing courses to further your development. That by purchasing books like H Points, H Point, by the way, is a really good book. It's about packaging. That you are willing to learn some of the details of how vehicles are designed in the first place, or that you take a course on practicing your sketching ability because you care about your self-development. So all those things play a role in your development, and even developing a portfolio that has a higher quality element to it. So sure, Quan, no problem. Renan M, I have a big problem with shadows and lights. Please, how can I practice with the car sketches, but not using simple shapes like squares and spheres? Well, I would have to ask you a question. Can you sketch and create shadows with squares and spheres first? If you can't, then I would be asking the question, why are you going to try to do something more complicated than that? So I would first practice squares and spheres and have a solid understanding on how to shade them, and make sure you rationalize that, because from there you're going to have to learn how to carve those basic shapes into something more complicated. And once you do that, having that background knowledge for shading even a sphere or a square is what's going to help you with these other shapes. So anyway, that's it's It's 11:15. I wanted to make this kind of quick because it was really going to be about just the 5 tips and habits or things that you should avoid when you start to draw. But I will have another session probably next week or something to do some more demos and start sketching and getting some feedback from you on what you want to see. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you guys have a wonderful day if you are overseas, because it's nighttime here. It's probably morning for you. And we'll see you here next time on Driven to Draw. If you got any questions or comments, please comment below. I also have an Instagram page. If you just go to Driven to Draw on Instagram, follow me there. I'll be constantly posting little sketches and doodles as I start to work toward filling up that page. So hope you enjoyed this. We'll see you here next time. Have a good one.